Hey guys, it's Tara Macklin hopping in here to talk to you about another thing related to food. And with the holidays coming up, I thought this would be great information to help kind of get your mind flowing. Especially if you're like me and you bake a lot, you may be looking for some alternatives as a PCOS woman to try to keep that blood sugar a little bit more balanced this holiday season. This is something that I've worked on over a couple of years, and I'm still growing in this area. There's just so many different options out there for things that have a lower glycemic index. Maybe you've heard that term before. So this is something that's not going to spike your sugar based off of a ranking of numbers within this index. I'm going to kind of glance over at my notes a couple times here and there, but I want to make sure that I'm getting you guys all the information you need. Be on the lookout. If it's not in here now when you're watching this video, based off of when you watch this video, there will be an index that I'm going to drop below that has all the things in here that I'm going to mention in this video. At the time that I'm recording this video, I haven't seen it yet, so I'm going to have to create it. I want to kind of run you through a couple different options for yourself to look into. They're pretty common. It's just for women that have insulin resistance or blood sugar issues, telling somebody that they can't eat sweets during the holiday is going to create a lot of negative responses. You feel like you're missing out, and then you get tired of it and you gorge, and it just creates a really bad situation emotionally, not to mention the physical consequences that come with the gorging or the binging that you're going to go through, and then the guilt and all the things that come with that. So in trying to help you navigate the holiday seasons and also just explore your options and be on the lookout of what's going to be the best for you, and maybe get your creative juices flowing as you try to recreate some of your favorite desserts for the holiday season. A lot of places where people start, and this really gets a lot of great commentary from people, is agave nectar. I have used this one before. It's not necessarily my favorite thing. It's still pretty sweet for me. I notice again that this is just something that I still kind of feel like I get a little bit more of a spike for me when I cook with it, or bake with it rather. And so I don't really use this one a whole lot, but I know there's a lot of people that appreciate it. So know that that is an option for you out there. The thing to note as I go through these alternatives is a lot of these alternatives either have a lot of the things not in them that spike your sugar but still provide sweetness, or they are a little bit more nutritionally dense than getting a refined or processed sugar option. So this is why you tend to see less of a spike of blood sugar with these alternatives. Another option is backstrap molasses. Again, this is not something that I necessarily personally cook with. I know my mom has used it in the past herself. But this is usually the biggest complaint with this, again, is if you use too much, this one will still kind of spike your blood sugar. So be on the lookout. This is not going to be something that you want to get crazy with in the kitchen. It does create great flavor. Molasses cookies, guys. I mean, that's something that's pretty common during the holiday season. So enjoy a couple of them, but don't get too crazy with the molasses and all the things. Coconut sugars. This is something that we use a lot. Actually, this is as far as grained sugars. This and another thing is pretty much all we ever have in the house is coconut sugar. So I absolutely love this one for baking. It creates really well as far as the ratios and the balances and things like that. So it balances really well in recipes when you're substituting that in. I've not had a problem with that. For me though, I do find it to be a little sweet. I don't really like overly sweet foods. I'm not someone who enjoys eating cake frosting and things like that. So take that as you kind of gather some of this information from me, what you will in this process. It's still a little bit high calorically when you're talking about coconut sugar. So keep that in mind if you're someone that's kind of trying to balance out a little bit with the calorie index. This is still really rather tasty, but maybe not something you want to eat a whole bunch of and not still worry about your waistline. And that's, I think, the thing at the end of the day. We talk about these sugar substitutes, and then we think we can still eat more or eat like how we used to when we were younger. That's not the case. This is still just to allow you to get in like that, maybe that favorite piece of pie or that cookie that you've been looking forward to, but it doesn't mean like go all out and just eat crazy and do as you wish without any thought or consequence. There's still consequence. You can still elevate your blood sugar at least a little bit. You can still put on weight. So keep that in mind when you're using some of these alternatives. There's not like a perfect fail-safe thing when it comes to these sugar alternatives, but in knowing that you're not spiking your blood sugar on an instant, gratification of that cookie or whatever, it does kind of maybe make you feel a little bit better about what you're eating in the process of eating it. Another option would be rice brown syrup. This is not something that I've cooked with. I know there's a lot of people out there. It's still higher on the glycemic index, so be careful with it. Date sugar. Now, I don't ever use like the granules, but I have taken dates myself and I have soaked them and put them in things. If you go back and look at some of the other recipes we've done, we actually use dates in our, I think it's like an Asian slaw. Yeah, that's what it's called, back in our other videos. But I also bake and cook with this. So nectar here, its index number is like, it's around 47, kind of depends on what index chart you look at. But I do find this to be rather helpful. I've used this in making salted caramel and things of that nature. So I do enjoy that. I've used it, snuck it into a couple other things too as well. I've not made cookies with it yet because this is a liquid. So, and not that it couldn't be used that way, I just haven't used it that way yet. So I'm gonna keep exploring and playing with this one, but I do like this one. It's got a pretty good flavor profile, but it will taste a little bit different if you're not used to that date, the nutrients that kind of come with the date syrup. So keep that in mind. It may not taste like grandma's cookies if you decide to substitute it in cookies. Maple syrup, that is something else. I actually make our homemade ice cream with a 1/4 cup of maple syrup, so I do find this one quite handy. Raw honey is another great option that you can use and substitute in with. Using different fruit purees of that nature is also great from a sweetener perspective. So there's a couple other options. Monk fruit sweetener. Guys, this has really become quite popular, especially if you are on like a keto plan. The reason for that is because the glycemic index has been reported to be a 0. So this would be your option if that is something that you're looking into. I do find this to be extremely sweet, and in kind of researching for this and writing down some notes, I think it's something like 200 times the sweetness of refined or processed sugars. So be leery if you're substituting, and this is a powdered version of it because I use it in my my cheesecake recipe, but they do have granulated versions of this as well and liquid versions. But if you are substituting in a recipe, you're going to want to cut that down significantly if you're just substituting it out. It does not do the 1-to-1 ratio. With sugar, let me see, I think this is, the back of the package says it's a 2-to-1 ratio, so cutting it in half would be something that would be considered. But for me, I would actually probably even cut it back a little bit more. My sweet tooth just isn't there. Stevia is another option that people use to substitute out sweeteners. I am not a stevia fan when it comes to baking. It is something that maybe isn't so bad in other drinks and things like that, liquid things. But for me, it's not my jam for baking. So I would not suggest that one for baking. Sugar alcohol, so xylitol is one and erythritol is another. I don't have experience with baking with these, but they are alcohol sugars, and I do have experience ingesting them. And I could tell you, for me, they create quite a bit of bloating and just some stomach upset that I don't necessarily enjoy. And being that you're already probably dealing with some other things when you're in the holidays, this is for me an option that I choose to skip. Other people do enjoy cooking with them, but it's not my jam. Last but not least is Yukon syrup, and this is something on the scales that I've seen, it's rated at about a 1, so it's kind of right up there with monk fruit. It is more of a syrup again, so this is something that I've not really had the experience of using. It's one that I plan on putting in my future uses to kind of check that out and see what I think of it. But it's one to look out for as well. So just know that's another option out there. And when I get to using it, I'll definitely give you guys some feedback on that. So hopefully my ramblings in here have been helpful and have given you some ideas of some things to look into and maybe some things to skip when you are looking into baking options. Again, a lot of people have different opinions about different things. I've seen lots of recipes out there that do involve sugar alcohols, and some people enjoy that. It's just, for me, that's not my jam. And some people really would just rather have the refined processed sugar. And that's fine too, guys. Like, don't feel like because it's the holidays that you have to skip out on some of your favorite treats. Give yourself grace. Maybe you make Thanksgiving a day where you're going to allow yourself to eat that piece of apple pie or pumpkin pie, no matter how it's made. And be okay with that decision, and don't beat yourself up with that at the end of the day. The big part at the end of the day is so that we don't have the emotional response to food and that we feel like we're missing out. But again, don't allow these sugar substitutes to then also open the door to allow you to go crazy either. It's all about balance, guys, at the end of the day. Sugars aren't inherently bad. It's the amount that we eat them and how balanced they are in our food. So just remember that. Hopefully you guys have found this all helpful. Make sure you guys click subscribe up above and click the bell so that you get alerted every time I put up a new video. And I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Bye-bye.